We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Russell Mercer never considered himself extraordinary. At 42, he'd built a life most would envy, a successful security consulting business specializing in digital forensics, a sprawling colonial home in the suburbs of Portland, Maine, and what he believed was a loving 15-year marriage to Vanessa, a real estate developer with ambition that matched his own. Their childless union had been a mutual choice, allowing them to build their empire together, or so Russell thought. On this particular Tuesday in October, Russell sat in his home office analyzing a breach for a high-profile client. Maine's signature fall colors painted the window view behind his dual monitors. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother, Elaine. "Don't forget, anniversary dinner Sunday at our place. Your father insists on cooking that ridiculous roast again." Russell smiled. 35 years of marriage between his parents, and his father still tried to impress his mother with the same recipe he'd used on their first date. That's what real love looked like. His thoughts drifted to his own approaching anniversary. 16 years next month. He'd already ordered a custom-designed bracelet from Vanessa's favorite jeweler. She'd been distant lately, blaming work stress, late nights at the new development site, and exhaustion from fighting with the city council over zoning permits. Russell glanced at the security system dashboard, a habit from his years working for the NSA before starting his own business. He designed their home system himself, a professional paranoia that Vanessa had once found endearing but now complained about. The cameras showed their cleaner, Mia, dusting in the living room and no movement in the other zones. His cell phone rang, an unknown number. "This is Russell Mercer." "Mr. Mercer, this is Detective Harrison Butler with Portland PD. I'm calling about a report filed by a Wesley Rankin regarding vandalism to his vehicle. He claims you were involved." Russell frowned. "Wesley Rankin? I don't know anyone by that name." "He says you confronted him outside the Eastland Hotel bar 3 nights ago, threatened him, and later that night his car was keyed with the words 'Stay away' scratched into the hood." "That's absurd. I haven't been to the Eastland in months. I was home all night on." "What night was this?" "Friday, October 11th. I was home all night. My security system will confirm that." After providing the detective with his system logs and promising to come to the station if needed, Russell hung up, puzzled. The name Wesley Rankin meant nothing to him. Curious, he ran a quick search. Wesley Rankin, 38, architect with Portview Design Associates, the same firm Vanessa's development company frequently worked with. Russell stared at the man's professional headshot. Rugged, confident smile. The kind of man who wore flannel and actually looked good in it. Something stirred in Russell's gut. An old familiar feeling from his intelligence days when disparate pieces suddenly threatened to form a pattern. He checked his watch. 2:15 p.m. Vanessa had mentioned a meeting downtown that would run late. He hesitated only a moment before pulling up the GPS tracking on her car, another security measure she'd initially protested but eventually accepted. Her Audi was parked at the Wharf Hotel, not the office building where her meeting should be. For the first time in their marriage, Russell decided to check her text messages remotely, an invasion of privacy he'd always respected despite having the capability. What he found made his blood run cold. Same room as last time. 2 p.m. Can't wait to feel you again. W. Below it, Vanessa's reply. My husband is clueless as always. See you soon. Russell's world tilted. 15 years of trust shattered in an instant. And now some stranger was trying to frame him for vandalism? This was no coincidence. He switched to the security camera footage from Friday night, the night he'd supposedly vandalized Rankin's car. The system showed him in his home office until 11 p.m., then upstairs to bed. Vanessa had come home at midnight, claiming a late meeting. He'd been half asleep when she'd slipped into bed, smelling of unfamiliar cologne. Russell stared at the frozen image of his wife on screen, realizing that while he'd built systems to protect them from outside threats, he'd never considered the danger already living within his walls. Chapter 2. Patterns of Deception. The next morning, Russell watched Vanessa prepare for work with new eyes. Her practiced movements now seemed performative, the way she hummed while applying makeup, how she kissed his cheek without quite meeting his gaze. Had she always been this transparent, or was he only seeing it now that he knew to look? Another late meeting tonight? Russell asked casually, sipping his coffee. Unfortunately, this Bayside project is a nightmare. The Historical Preservation Committee is fighting us at every turn. She tucked her dark hair behind her ear, a tell she'd had since they first met. A sign she was lying. Want me to bring you dinner? I could drop by around 7. Panic flashed across her face before she composed herself. No need. We're ordering in. Probably be in conference room hell until midnight again. Shame about that vandalism at Portview Design, Russell said, watching her carefully. One of their architects had his car damaged. Police actually called me about it. Vanessa's hand froze midway to her coffee mug. Oh, why would they call you? Some mix-up. Guy named Wesley Rankin thought he saw me near his car Friday night. Her attempt at nonchalance failed miserably. Never heard of him. Probably some random crazy. Anyway, I'm late. After she left, Russell called his oldest friend, Dominic Vitale, who ran a private investigation firm specializing in matrimonial cases. I need a favor, Dom. Off the books. You finally figured it out, huh? Dom's deep voice carried genuine concern. Russell felt ice in his veins. You knew. Suspected. Vanessa's been seen around town with a guy. I was hoping I was wrong. Wesley Rankin. He's trying to frame me for vandalizing his car. Dom whistled. Bold play. What do you need? Everything on both of them. And I need to know if there's more to this than an affair. The next week passed in surreal clarity for Russell. While maintaining a facade of normalcy with Vanessa, he began gathering information. Dom provided surveillance photos confirming the affair had been going on for at least 6 months. The photos showed Vanessa and Wesley dining intimately at restaurants, entering hotels, and once kissing in her car outside a property development site. Russell also discovered troubling financial discrepancies. Large withdrawals from their joint account corresponding with deposits to a new account Vanessa had opened privately. Almost $50,000 had been siphoned away over the past year. More alarmingly, he found evidence that Vanessa had been searching online for information about Maine's divorce laws, specifically about business assets and property division. She'd also been in contact with a high-profile divorce attorney known for aggressive tactics. The final piece came when Russell's father called. Son, I need to ask you something uncomfortable, Douglas Mercer said gravely. Your mother ran into Vanessa having lunch with our family attorney yesterday. When your mother approached them, they looked like they'd seen a ghost. Vanessa claimed they were discussing an investment property, but Howard couldn't look your mother in the eye. She's planning to blindside me, Russell concluded, his voice steady despite the betrayal cutting deeper than the affair itself. She wants everything I've built. What are you going to do? His father asked. I'm going to let her think she's winning, Russell replied, a plan already forming. The anniversary dinner Sunday. Let's proceed as normal. Don't tell Mom what we suspect yet. Working through the night, Russell discovered Wesley Rankin wasn't just Vanessa's lover. He was her business partner in a new development company they'd secretly formed 3 months earlier. They'd been using Russell's connections and proprietary information from his security business to underbid competitors and secure contracts. Russell also found messages revealing a more immediate threat. Vanessa planned to accuse him of financial misconduct at the family dinner, creating witnesses to support her upcoming divorce filing. The $10,000 missing from their joint account, money she'd taken, would be her evidence. As Sunday approached, Russell prepared himself for the performance of his life. He transferred his most important assets to secure accounts, backed up evidence of Vanessa's misconduct, and installed additional covert surveillance in their home. He also made a crucial call to Detective Butler, establishing groundwork for what would happen next. What Vanessa didn't know was that Russell had spent years developing digital forensics tools for law enforcement. He understood evidence better than most prosecutors, and he was prepared to use every skill he'd honed throughout his career. On Sunday morning, as Vanessa dressed for the family dinner, selecting a conservative blue dress that made her look both professional and sympathetic, Russell watched her rehearse expressions in the mirror. Hurt, confusion, righteous anger. She was preparing for her performance too. Ready for dinner, darling? She asked, her smile not reaching her eyes. Absolutely, Russell replied, wearing a mask of his own. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Chapter 3. The Cold Waterfalls. The Mercer family home stood as it always had, a stately Victorian overlooking the bay, where Russell had grown up surrounded by love and honest values. As Russell and Vanessa arrived, familiar cars lined the curved driveway. His sister Naomi and her husband Camden, his younger brother Preston and his wife Deirdre, and several cousins' vehicles. The annual anniversary celebration for Douglas and Elaine Mercer had evolved into a family tradition spanning generations. Russell entered carrying a bouquet for his mother and an expensive bottle of scotch for his father. Vanessa followed with a designer gift bag containing silk scarves she'd chosen specifically to impress her mother-in-law. Her charm offensive had begun before they even reached the door. There they are. Elaine Mercer embraced her son warmly, then Vanessa. At 68, Elaine retained the sharp intelligence that had made her a formidable federal judge before retirement. Vanessa, you look stunning as always. These are beautiful, Elaine said, accepting the flowers. Russ always remembers my favorites. He's thoughtful that way, Vanessa agreed, her voice hitting the perfect note of affection. Russell noted how his family beamed at them. The picture-perfect couple. If only they knew. Dinner progressed pleasantly through multiple courses, Douglas proudly serving his famous roast as everyone shared family updates. Russell's sister Naomi announced her pregnancy, bringing joyful toasts and congratulations. Russell watched Vanessa calculating, adjusting her timing as the meal progressed. She waited until dessert was served, his mother's homemade apple pie, before making her move. I hate to bring something unpleasant up during such a lovely celebration, Vanessa began, her voice dropping to a concerned timbre. But I'm worried about Russell. All eyes turned to her as silence fell across the table. He's been acting strangely lately. Secretive. I found him going through my purse last night. She turned troubled eyes toward Russell. Darling, I think you should tell them what's going on. Russell set down his fork. I'm not sure what you mean. The money issues, Russell. The gambling. Vanessa reached for his hand across the table, a calculated gesture of support. We should be honest with the family. They can help. For a moment, genuine confusion crossed Russell's face. He hadn't anticipated this specific angle. Gambling? Douglas asked sharply. Son, is this true? No, it's not, Russell replied calmly. I've never gambled in my life. Vanessa produced a handkerchief, dabbing at her eyes. This is what I mean. The denial. I found receipts from the casino in Oxford, and now money is missing. Russell, his mother interrupted, professional concern in her voice. If you're in trouble, we could discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss because there's no gambling problem, Russell insisted. I don't know what Vanessa's talking about. Stop lying. Vanessa's voice rose dramatically. I had $10,000 in cash in my wallet for the contractor payment tomorrow. It's gone, and you were the only one who had access to my bag. Murmurs rippled around the table. Russell noticed his brother-in-law Camden, an accountant, eyeing him suspiciously. Why would you have that much cash at home, much less in your wallet? Russell asked reasonably. The contractor insisted on cash. You know this. Vanessa turned to the family. We discussed it just yesterday. He's gaslighting me now. Russell shook his head. Vanessa, I never. Check his pockets, she suddenly demanded, standing up. I bet the money's on him right now. He's been acting strange all evening. This is ridiculous, Russell said, but his father was watching him with growing concern. Son, if there's nothing to hide. Russell stood slowly. Fine. Check my pockets. Check whatever you want. When his father hesitated, Vanessa took matters into her own hands. She approached Russell, reaching toward his dinner jacket. As she patted his chest pocket, her hand lingered. Then her expression changed to triumph as she pulled out a thick envelope. What's this, then? She demanded, opening it to reveal stacks of $100 bills. Russell stared at the envelope in genuine shock. That's not mine. I didn't put that there. Liar, Vanessa shouted, her performance reaching its crescendo. You stole from me. From us. Before Russell could respond, Vanessa grabbed a pitcher of ice water from the table and threw it directly in his face. The cold shock silenced everyone as water dripped from Russell's hair and soaked his shirt. "Vanessa!" Elaine gasped. "I'm sorry," Vanessa sobbed, now playing the devastated wife, pushed beyond endurance. "But I can't take the lies anymore. The money problems, the late nights. And now stealing." Russell slowly wiped water from his eyes, his expression unreadable. The family stared in horror at the unfolding scene. "Russell, is this true?" his father demanded. "No," Russell said quietly. "But it seems I don't have much credibility at the moment." Naomi, always protective of her brother, approached Vanessa. "Let's all calm down. There must be an explanation." "The explanation is that my husband has a gambling addiction and stole my money," Vanessa insisted. "I've been covering for him for months, but I can't do it anymore." Russell looked around the room at his family's faces, shock, disappointment, confusion. Only his mother's eyes held a hint of skepticism. "I think it's best if I leave," Russell said finally. "That's probably wise," his father replied stiffly. "We'll discuss this when heads are cooler." As Russell turned to go, Vanessa delivered her final blow. "I'm not coming home tonight, Russell. I can't trust you anymore. I'll be staying with a friend until you get help." A friend named Wesley, Russell thought, but didn't say. He merely nodded and walked out, feeling his family's judgment on his back. In his car, soaking wet and alone, Russell didn't immediately start the engine. Instead, he pulled out his phone and sent a single text to Detective Butler. It happened exactly as predicted. "I'll be at the station in 20 minutes with the evidence." What Vanessa couldn't know, was that Russell had anticipated something like this. The security consultant hadn't just been passive in his discovery of her betrayal. He'd been wearing a body cam disguised as a tie pin, recording everything. More importantly, he'd installed microscopic cameras in their bedroom the previous week, capturing Vanessa placing the money in his jacket while he was in the shower before dinner. And what she absolutely couldn't have anticipated, Russell had already spoken with the police about unusual financial activities he'd noticed in their accounts. The trap had been set long before she'd thrown that ice water. Russell started his car, a cold, determined smile replacing the mask of shocked betrayal. The water had been freezing, but his revenge would be served much colder. Chapter 4: Shattered Reflections. The Portland Police Department's interview room felt appropriately sterile as Russell sat across from Detective Harrison Butler, still in his water-stained dress shirt. Butler, a veteran officer with 20 years of experience etched into his weathered face, reviewed the footage from Russell's body camera with increasing interest. "She planted the money while you were in the shower," Butler confirmed, pausing the video that clearly showed Vanessa slipping the envelope into Russell's jacket pocket. "And you had no knowledge of this?" "None," Russell replied, "but I suspected something was coming. That's why I installed the cameras and contacted you last week." Butler's partner, Detective Fiona Tate, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s with a reputation for spotting liars, studied Russell. "What made you think your wife would try to frame you?" Russell explained the pattern he'd uncovered, the affair with Wesley Rankin, the financial discrepancies, the earlier attempt to frame him for vandalism, and the divorce preparations. "So this is what? Insurance against a messy divorce?" Tate asked skeptically. "This is evidence of fraud, false accusation, and possibly conspiracy," Russell corrected her. "My wife and her lover have stolen proprietary information from my security firm, embezzled from our joint accounts, and now attempted to destroy my reputation with my family and potentially set me up for criminal charges." Butler rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "The evidence of her planting the money is solid. The rest we'll need to investigate." As they continued their discussion, Russell's phone buzzed with messages from family members, his father demanding explanations, his sister offering support despite her confusion, his brother asking bluntly if he had a gambling problem. He ignored them all for now. What he couldn't ignore was the call from Tom Whitfield, his company's legal counsel. "Russell, we have a situation," Tom said without preamble when Russell stepped out to take the call. "Wesley Rankin just filed a police report claiming you hacked his personal email and threatened him. He's also filed a temporary restraining order against you." "That's impossible," Russell replied. "I've been either with my family or at the police station all evening." Nevertheless, Two officers just showed up at your office with a warrant to seize your work computer. Maya refused them entry until I arrive, but this is escalating quickly. Russell felt cold fury building. They're moving faster than I anticipated. Tom, don't let anyone touch those systems until I get there. Activate Protocol Blackout. Protocol Blackout was an emergency measure Russell had designed for potential data breaches. It locked down all systems with military-grade encryption and activated continuous backup to secure servers. It would protect his client's information while preserving evidence of who had accessed the system and when. When Russell arrived at his office building, the scene was tense. Two uniformed officers stood in the reception area while Maya Chun, his operations director and longest-serving employee, blocked access to the main office with arms crossed and a determined expression. Tom Whitfield was showing the officers' documentation and challenging the scope of their warrant. "Mr. Mercer," one officer called as Russell approached, "we have a warrant to seize your computer equipment as part of an investigation into cyber harassment." "Understand, officer," Russell replied calmly. "But those systems contain confidential client information protected by contract and, in some cases, federal security clearances. My attorney is preparing an emergency motion to modify the warrant to allow for proper protection of unrelated data." The standoff continued for another hour until a judge approved a compromise. The police would image Russell's drives rather than seize the physical equipment, and an independent technical expert would be present to verify the process, focused only on relevant data. As the technical procedures began, Russell took Maya aside. "They're coming after the business now. This isn't just about the marriage." Maya's usually calm demeanor cracked slightly. "Russell, what the hell is happening? First I hear Vanessa's accusing you of theft. Now Wesley Rankin, who I thought was just a client contact, is claiming harassment." Russell gave her a condensed version of events. Maya had been with him since he started the company. She was family more than an employee. "We always knew Vanessa was ambitious," Maya said carefully, "but this is calculated." "They've been planning this for months," Russell agreed. "And they're not alone." A search through company records had revealed that Barry Lennox, one of their senior security consultants, had accessed proprietary client information and security protocols outside normal business hours, information that had later appeared in proposal for Vanessa and Wesley's new company. "Barry's been working here 7 years," Maya said, shocked. "Why would he betray us?" "That's what I intend to find out," Russell replied. The night stretched into early morning. Russell returned home to find the house empty, exactly as expected. He entered his home office and activated advanced security protocols he'd never shared with Vanessa. Hidden panels revealed backup systems and monitoring equipment that had recorded everything in the house for the past week. Russell downloaded the data to secure storage and prepared for what he knew would come next. He couldn't prevent the attack on his reputation in business, but he could ensure he had evidence of everything. He tried to sleep for a few hours, but found himself staring at the ceiling, reviewing the past months for signs he'd missed. Had he been so absorbed in his work that he'd failed to see Vanessa's true nature? Or had she always been this person, and he'd simply chosen not to see it? At 9 a.m., his lawyer called with news. Wesley Rankin had filed an emergency petition with the licensing board to suspend Russell's security firm's credentials, claiming evidence of unethical practices. Simultaneously, Vanessa had frozen their joint accounts and filed for emergency divorce proceedings, claiming Russell had become erratic and potentially dangerous. By noon, media outlets were running the story. Local security expert accused of harassment, theft, and professional misconduct. Russell's phone rang constantly with clients concerned about their systems and information. Russell sat in his empty house, watching his life and reputation unravel with clinical detachment. They had orchestrated the perfect storm to destroy everything he'd built. But what they didn't realize was that Russell had spent his entire career planning for worst-case scenarios, and he had contingencies they couldn't begin to imagine. He opened his laptop and began implementing the first phase of his response. As his fingers flew across the keyboard, the shock and hurt transformed into something colder and more focused. Russell Mercer had spent his life building systems to protect others. Now he would use those same skills to protect himself and dismantle those who had betrayed him. Chapter 5. Currents Beneath the Surface. 3 days after the disastrous family dinner, Russell sat in a nondescript rental apartment he'd maintained for years as a secure work location, a precaution from his intelligence days that Vanessa knew nothing about. The walls were covered with digital displays showing surveillance footage, financial records, and communication logs. A command center for the war he now found himself fighting. His phone rang, his mother calling for the 5th time that day. Finally, he answered. "I'm fine, Mom." "You're not fine," Elaine Mercer replied firmly. "Your wife has accused you of theft and gambling, frozen your accounts, and turned the family against you. And you've barely defended yourself." "I'm handling it my way," Russell said. "By hiding?" "Russell Douglas Mercer, I raised you better than this." Russell sighed. "I'm not hiding. I'm building a case." "A case? Against your wife? Against everyone involved in this conspiracy?" Silence stretched between them. Finally, his mother spoke again, her judicial instincts engaged. "You believe this goes beyond marital problems." "I know it does. Vanessa, Wesley Rankin, and at least one person from my company have been systematically stealing my clients, copying my proprietary systems, and setting up a competing business. The accusations against me are meant to destroy my credibility so they can take everything." Another pause. "Your father thinks you're having a breakdown. And you. I've sentenced enough liars to know when I'm hearing the truth," Elaine said. "Tell me what you need." Russell closed his eyes in relief. "Time. And maybe a decent meal that isn't takeout. Dinner tonight. Just you and me. Your father's playing cards with his friends." After hanging up, Russell returned to his work. The investigation was yielding disturbing results. The conspiracy was larger than he'd initially thought. Financial records revealed that Barry Lennox, his employee, had received substantial payment from shell company traced back to Wesley Rankin. But more troubling was the discovery that Lawrence Caldwell, his father-in-law and a prominent Portland attorney, appeared to be orchestrating significant parts of the plan. Caldwell had never approved of Russell, considering him beneath Vanessa's social standing despite Russell's financial success. Now it seemed Caldwell was using his legal connections to expedite the attacks on Russell's business and personal reputation. Russell's phone lit up with a text from Dominic Vitale. "Meet me at the usual place." Found something big. The usual place was a small Greek restaurant off the tourist path, where the owner, an old friend of Dom's family, guaranteed privacy in a back room. Dom was waiting with a thick folder and a grave expression. "Your father-in-law is dirty," Dom stated without preamble, sliding the folder across the table. "He's been running a real estate scheme for years, using inside information from his legal practice to acquire properties before development plans are made public." Russell flipped through the documents, property records, bank transfers, corporate filings. "How did I miss this?" "You weren't looking. But guess who else is involved? Wesley Rankin's father, Senator Philip Rankin." The revelation hit Russell like a physical blow. Senator Rankin chaired the state's Urban Development Committee and had significant influence over major municipal projects, exactly the kind of inside information Lawrence Caldwell would need for his scheme. The affair between Vanessa and Wesley probably started as a business arrangement, Dom finished. Two powerful families aligning interests. "And I became an obstacle," Russell concluded. "My security systems potentially exposed their methods." "There's more," Dom said, his expression grim. "They're planning something big with the Old Harbor District. Your company did the security assessment for the city last year, right?" Russell nodded. His firm had evaluated vulnerabilities in the historic waterfront area slated for major redevelopment. Caldwell and Rankin have quietly purchased most of the properties surrounding the development zone through shell companies. If they can access your security assessment, they'll know exactly how to manipulate the city's systems to ensure their rezoning applications succeed. That's why they needed Barry, Russell realized. He worked on that assessment. Dom nodded. They're moving fast. Once they destroy your credibility and take control of your systems, there's nothing stopping them from making millions on this deal. "Except me," Russell said quietly. Back at his command center, Russell began connecting the dots. The attack on his reputation, the false accusations, the affair, all were means to an end. The real target was his company's information about the Old Harbor project. Russell made a series of calls to former colleagues from his NSA days, cashing in favors accumulated over years. By evening, he had access to financial records that would normally require court orders and weeks of investigation. When he arrived at his parents' house for dinner, his mother took one look at his face and said, "You've found something." Over his mother's pot roast, comfort food from his childhood, Russell outlined what he discovered. "This isn't just about my marriage," he concluded. "This is public corruption at the highest level of state government." Judge Elaine Mercer, who had spent decades upholding the law, didn't hesitate. "What are you going to do?" "First, protect my business and clients. Then gather enough evidence to expose everyone involved." "And Vanessa?" Russell's expression hardened. She made her choice. His mother studied him carefully. "Don't let this change who you are, Russell. Justice is not the same as vengeance." "Sometimes they look remarkably similar," Russell replied. The next morning, Russell implemented the next phase of his plan. He contacted a reporter at the Portland Press-Herald, Zoe Clark, an investigative journalist known for her exposés on political corruption. Without revealing his full hand, he provided her with enough information about unusual property purchases around the Old Harbor district to pique her interest. Simultaneously, he sent encrypted messages to key clients, warning them of a potential data breach and recommending immediate security protocol changes that only he knew how to implement. This would protect them while cutting off access to anyone using stolen credentials. Russell then turned his attention to Barry Lennox. Rather than confronting him directly, Russell sent him an encrypted message through a secure channel. "I know about Caldwell, Rankin, and the Old Harbor scheme. I have evidence of your involvement. Meet me tomorrow at 3 p.m. if you want a chance to explain before I go to the FBI." The trap was set. If Barry was truly compromised, he would alert the others. Russell had built in a tracking protocol that would record who Barry contacted after receiving the message. Sure enough, within 30 minutes, Barry's phone connected to Wesley Rankin's number, then to Lawrence Caldwell's. Russell traced subsequent calls to Senator Rankin and 3 members of the city planning department. The conspiracy was larger than even he had suspected, but now he knew who all the players were. That evening, as Russell finalized details for his meeting with Barry, an unexpected visitor arrived at his secure apartment, his sister Naomi. "How did you find me?" he asked, surprised. "I'm a data analyst, remember? I figured you'd use cash for a place like this, but you'd still need an internet connection." She held up a signal detector. "You taught me this trick yourself." Russell couldn't help smiling despite the circumstances. Always the quick study. Naomi didn't return the smile. "The family is falling apart over this, Russ. Dad's convinced you've lost it. Even Camden thinks you might have a gambling problem you're hiding. And what do you think? I think my brother would never steal or lie. But I also think Vanessa seemed genuinely devastated at dinner. So either you're hiding something, or she's a better actress than Meryl Streep." Russell hesitated only briefly before bringing his sister into his confidence, showing her the evidence he'd gathered. Naomi's eyes widened as she processed the scope of the conspiracy. "This is Jesus, Russ. These people are seriously connected. If you go after them, they'll destroy you." "They're already trying," Russell pointed out. "At least now I'm fighting back. What's your endgame here?" "Even with evidence, going against a state senator and one of Portland's top lawyers is suicide." Russell's expression was calm, determined. "Tomorrow, I meet with Barry Lennox. He's the weak link. Once he realizes how much evidence I have, he'll flip on the others to save himself." Naomi looked unconvinced. "And if he doesn't, then I move to Plan B, which is—" Russell smiled grimly. "I become what they've accused me of being." Chapter 6. The Gathering Storm. The Lighthouse Cafe sat on the edge of the harbor, a local establishment where dockworkers and business people mingled over simple but excellent seafood. Russell arrived early for his meeting with Barry Lennox, selecting a corner table with a clear view of both entrances and the parking lot beyond the windows. He wore an unassuming gray sweater and jeans, nothing like his usual business attire, and a baseball cap pulled low. On the table before him sat a manila envelope and a laptop. Both were props in the performance he was about to give. Barry arrived precisely at 3 p.m., his normally confident stride faltering as he scanned the cafe. When he spotted Russell, his pale complexion grew even whiter. At 45, Barry had the look of a man who'd aged a decade overnight. Rumpled clothes, shadowed eyes, hair uncombed. "Russell," he said, sliding into the seat opposite. "What's this about?" His attempt at casual confusion failed miserably. "You know exactly what it's about, Barry." Russell kept his voice low, controlled. 7 years, I trusted you with my company's most sensitive information. 7 years you were like family. Barry's gaze darted to the envelope. "I don't know what Vanessa's been telling you, but—" "Vanessa hasn't told me anything," Russell interrupted. "She doesn't need to. I have the server logs showing you accessing the old harbor security assessment files at 2 a.m. on 6 different occasions. I have transfer records of payments from Cayman account numbers matching Wesley Rankin's shell corporations to your offshore account in Belize." He tapped the envelope. "I have everything." The color drained completely from Barry's face. "Russell, you have to understand, they approached me. They said it was just information about development opportunities. I didn't know they were planning to destroy me, to steal my company, to corrupt public officials." Russell's voice remained steady, but his eyes hardened. "You accessed vulnerability assessments for city infrastructure, Barry. That goes beyond corporate espionage into potential criminal territory." Barry's hands trembled slightly as he reached for a glass of water. "What do you want?" "The truth. All of it. Starting with when this began and who recruited you." Over the next hour, Barry confessed everything. Vanessa had approached him first, nearly a year ago, claiming she needed help understanding Russell's security systems for a surprise anniversary present. Small requests gradually escalated until Barry realized he was complicit in something much larger. By then, Wesley Rankin had compromising information on Barry, a gambling debt Barry had hidden from everyone, and threatened exposure if he didn't cooperate. "The Old Harbor Project is just the beginning," Barry explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "Senator Rankin has been using inside information to direct state infrastructure projects for years. The security assessment you did revealed vulnerabilities in the city's zoning database. They plan to exploit those to manipulate property values across 3 counties. And Lawrence Caldwell," Russell pressed. "He's the legal shield. His firm handles all the transactions through a maze of shell companies. Nobody can trace the properties back to Rankin or the other investors." Russell nodded, processing this confirmation of his suspicions. "Who else from my company is involved?" Barry hesitated. "Who else, Barry?" "Tamar in accounting." "And—" Barry swallowed hard. "Maya." Russell felt as if he'd been struck. "Maya? Chun?" "My Maya." Barry nodded miserably. "They got to her 6 months ago. I don't know how they turned her, but she's been providing them with client information and system access." Russell's mind raced, recalibrating his entire plan. Maya had been with him from the beginning, had helped build the company from nothing. Her betrayal cut even deeper than Vanessa's. "I'm sorry, Russell," Barry said, genuine regret in his voice. "I never wanted it to go this far. When they started talking about setting you up for criminal charges, I tried to back out, but Rankin threatened my family. And now I'm probably finished either way." Barry looked defeated. "Once they find out I've talked to you, my career is over. Maybe worse." Russell studied the man across from him. Not a mastermind, just a weak link who'd been manipulated and coerced. "There's another option. Work with me." "What?" "Continue giving them information, exactly what I tell you to give them. Be my inside man." Hope flickered briefly in Barry's eyes. "You'd trust me after what I've done." "Trust has nothing to do with it," Russell replied coldly. "I'll be monitoring every byte of data you access. One deviation from my instructions, and the FBI gets everything I have on you. But help me bring them down, and I'll make sure your cooperation is noted." Barry didn't hesitate. "What do you need me to do?" Russell laid out his requirements: specific misinformation to feed back to the conspiracy, exact times to access certain files, and a complete account of all past information Barry had provided them. As Barry left, visibly relieved to have a potential way out, Russell remained at the table, processing the revelation about Maya. The betrayal stung, but it also provided an opportunity. Maya had administrative access to all company systems, access he could now use to his advantage. Russell's phone vibrated with a text from Zoe Clark, the investigative reporter. Found something big on the Old Harbor properties. Need to meet ASAP. Before he could reply, another message appeared, this one from Detective Butler. Warrant issued for your arrest. Cyber harassment and threatening communications. Get to the station now before they pick you up. Russell's mind worked rapidly, calculating options. The conspiracy was accelerating their timeline, likely because Barry had met with him. He sent a quick reply to Butler. On my way. Have my attorney meet me there. To Zoe, he wrote, can't meet now. Police matter to handle. Check property records for Bayside Ventures, LLC. Connection to Senator Rankin. Russell paid his bill and left the cafe, aware that he was likely under surveillance. Rather than hiding, he drove directly to the police station where Detective Butler was waiting. They're claiming you sent threatening emails to Wesley Rankin and accessed city planning databases without authorization, Butler explained in a private interview room. The evidence looks solid. Emails from your account, access logs from your IP address. All fabricated, Russell replied calmly. I've been documenting evidence of a conspiracy involving Wesley Rankin, my wife Vanessa, my father-in-law Lawrence Caldwell, and potentially Senator Philip Rankin. Butler's eyebrows rose. That's a serious accusation against powerful people, which is why they're trying to discredit me and shut me down before I can expose them. Russell provided Butler with copies of the evidence he'd gathered, careful to withhold certain elements for leverage. As a digital security expert, he knew exactly how the falsified evidence against him had been created, and he explained the technical inconsistencies that proved it was fabricated. After 2 hours of questioning, Butler looked troubled. This is beyond my pay grade. Mercer, you're talking about potential corruption involving a state senator. I know, but right now I just need to address these immediate charges so I can continue my investigation. Butler studied him for a long moment. The cyber harassment charges are from Portland PD's jurisdiction. The database access allegations involve federal systems. That gives us some procedural room to maneuver. By evening, Russell had been processed and released on his own recognizance, thanks largely to Butler's intervention and his own sterling prior record. His attorney had already filed motions challenging the evidence against him. Outside the police station, Russell found his brother Preston waiting beside his car. Naomi told me everything. Preston said without preamble. I've been doing some research. Vanessa cleaned out your joint investment account yesterday. Nearly $200,000. Russell nodded, unsurprised. And Dad still thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. But Mom's working on him. The brothers stood in silence for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling between them. What now? Preston finally asked. Russell checked his watch. 8:27 p.m. Now I spring the trap. Back at his secure apartment, Russell activated a program he'd been developing for the past 3 days. Code flowed across his screen as he implemented what he'd privately termed Protocol Lazarus, a comprehensive cyber countermeasure designed to expose the conspiracy while protecting his own systems. First, he activated a sophisticated honeypot on his company's servers, a false repository of valuable data designed to attract and track intruders. With Barry's intelligence, he knew exactly when Maya and others would attempt to access sensitive information about the Old Harbor project. Second, he triggered a series of secure communications to key clients, regulatory agencies, and law enforcement contacts, establishing time-stamped records of his concerns about potential corruption in the Old Harbor development. Finally, he sent an encrypted message to Detective Butler with coordinates to a secure server containing copies of all his evidence, an insurance policy in case the conspiracy moved against him directly. As midnight approached, Russell took a moment to reflect on how completely his life had changed in just 1 week. His marriage was over. His company was under attack. His reputation had been smeared. But ironically, he felt more alive, more focused than he had in years. The comfortable life he'd built had made him complacent. Now, forced back into the mindset of his intelligence days, He was operating with a clarity and purpose that had been missing for too long. His phone rang. Dominic. They're moving tonight, Dom reported without greeting. Surveillance shows Vanessa and Wesley meeting with a tech specialist at the Eastland Hotel. They're planning to access your company's main server at 2 a.m. Perfect, Russell replied. Everything's in place. Are you set at the office? All systems go. But Russell, there's something else you should know. Vanessa withdrew another $50,000 in cash today. That kind of money isn't for running away. It's for hiring someone. Russell absorbed this information with disturbing calm. They're getting desperate. Make sure the recording systems at the office are functioning properly. I want everything documented. After hanging up, Russell made one final call to his mother. It's happening tonight, he told her. By morning, everything changes. Be careful, she replied, concern evident in her voice. These people have proven they'll do anything to protect themselves. So will I, Russell assured her, a cold determination settling into his bones. So will I. Chapter 7. Checkmate in Motion. Thunder rolled across Portland's skyline as Russell parked a block from his company headquarters. Rain pattered against his windshield, casting the streetlights into shimmering halos. It was 1:30 a.m., 30 minutes before Vanessa and her accomplices planned to access his servers. Russell slipped on a waterproof jacket with a hidden camera built into the lapel and checked his equipment one last time. Dominic was already inside the building, monitoring security systems from a concealed office on the 4th floor. Two private security contractors, former military colleagues Russell trusted implicitly, were positioned strategically, one in the stairwell, another in the parking structure. Status report. Russell spoke quietly into his encrypted phone. All quiet, Dom replied. Building access logs show Maya used her key card at 11:45 p.m. She's in her office, logged into the admin system. And our other players? GPS tracker on Vanessa's car shows she left the Eastland Hotel 20 minutes ago. She's approaching from the south side. A second vehicle, registered to Wesley Rankin, is circling the block. Russell felt a strange calm settle over him. They brought backup. Smart. Too smart. The third car has diplomatic plates, Senator Rankin's courtesy vehicle. This is bigger than we thought. Russell processed this information rapidly. If Senator Rankin was personally involved in tonight's operation, the stakes were even higher than he'd calculated. The senator wouldn't risk direct exposure unless the potential gain, or the potential loss, was substantial. Maintain positions, Russell instructed. No one moves until my signal. Russell entered the building through an emergency exit with a security flaw only he knew about, a deliberate vulnerability he'd left in the system as a backdoor. Moving silently through the darkened halls of the company he'd built, he reflected on the irony. His expertise in identifying security weaknesses was now being used to breach his own fortress. From a maintenance closet on the executive floor, Russell accessed a hidden panel that contained a secondary monitoring system. The display showed Maya in her office, copying files from a secure database. On another screen, he watched the main entrance where a security guard, one not employed by Russell, had taken up position. His phone vibrated. A text from Dom. 3 targets entering lobby. Vanessa, Wesley, and an unknown tech specialist. The senator is waiting in his car. Russell's eyes narrowed. The senator was being cautious, sending others to do the dirty work while maintaining deniability. Exactly what he would expect from a career politician. Through his monitoring system, Russell watched as the imposter security guard waved the group through without checking credentials. They moved with purpose toward the elevators, their body language betraying their confidence. This wasn't their first operation. Russell switched to the camera feed from Maya's office just as the elevator doors opened on her floor. What happened next confirmed his suspicions. Maya greeted Vanessa with a familiar embrace. Not the awkward interaction of recent co-conspirators, but the comfortable acknowledgement of longtime allies. How long? Russell whispered to himself, the betrayal cutting deeper. How long have you been working against me? Russell typed a sequence of commands into the monitoring system, activating phase 1 of his plan. Throughout the building, invisible to the intruders, dormant systems awakened. recording devices, specialized monitoring software, and a proprietary program that would track every keystroke and file access. In Maya's office, the group gathered around her computer as she displayed what appeared to be the complete security assessment for the Old Harbor project. Wesley Rankin smiled triumphantly, his hand resting possessively on Vanessa's lower back. "The zoning override codes are all here," Maya was saying, pointing to the screen. "With these, you can change property designations without triggering review protocols." "And the backup systems?" the unknown tech specialist asked, a wiry man with nervous hands. "Disabled from maintenance tonight," Maya assured him. "Russell scheduled it last week. He has no idea we're using his own maintenance window against him." Russell had to admire their thoroughness. They'd monitored his legitimate system maintenance schedule and planned their operation accordingly. What they didn't know was that he'd anticipated exactly this move. Vanessa leaned closer to the screen. "What about the FBI monitoring flags? Will this trigger any alerts?" "Already handled," Maya replied. "I redirected those notifications to a dead server. By the time anyone notices, the changes will be implemented and untraceable." Wesley clapped his hands together once. "Perfect. Let's get this done and get out. My father is getting impatient." Russell watched as the tech specialist inserted a specialized drive into Maya's computer and began a sophisticated data transfer. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. The actual commission of the crime, captured in high-definition video with perfect audio. Russell sent a text to Dom. "Execute Phase 2. Instantly, invisible to the intruders, the data being transferred to their drive was subtly altered. Property coordinates shifted by fractions of degrees, authorization codes changed by single digits, timestamps modified. The changes were minor enough to evade immediate detection, but significant enough to render the stolen information useless. Simultaneously, a separate program began documenting precisely which files were being accessed and by whom, creating a forensic trail that would be impossible to deny in court. As the data transfer reached completion, Russell sent another text. Phase 3. Throughout the building, digital evidence of the intrusion was being packaged and transmitted to secure external servers accessible only to Russell and, as of 10 minutes ago, Detective Butler and the FBI Cybercrime Unit. The group in Maya's office was celebrating their apparent success, unaware that they had just implicated themselves in multiple federal crimes. "We should celebrate," Wesley suggested, pulling Vanessa close. "Once these zoning changes are implemented tomorrow, the properties my father acquired will triple in value." "Let's wait until it's done," Vanessa advised, though she didn't pull away from his embrace. "Russell still has to be dealt with." Wesley's expression darkened. "My father's contact is handling that tomorrow. The evidence of financial fraud has already been planted in his personal accounts. By this time tomorrow, Russell will be too busy defending himself against federal charges to worry about us." Russell felt cold fury building, but maintained his focus. He'd suspected they planned to frame him for financial crimes, but hearing it confirmed still stung. "I still don't understand why we couldn't just divorce him normally," Vanessa was saying. "This seems excessive." Wesley laughed. "A normal divorce would give him half of everything, including your stake in our new company. This way, he loses everything, and we gain it all. Besides, my father needs the Old Harbor project to succeed. Too many important people are invested." "Which important people?" the tech specialist asked, curiosity overcoming his usual caution. Wesley started to answer, but Maya interrupted. "The less you know, the better, Craig. Just finish the transfer." Russell noted the name, Craig, another piece of the puzzle. Likely Craig Doherty, a known cyber mercenary who had worked for several political campaigns in the past. As the group prepared to leave, Russell sent a final message to Dom. "Lock it down." Throughout the building, silent alarms triggered. Security doors engaged automatically, sealing each floor. In Maya's office, the intruders froze as her computer screen suddenly went black, replaced by a single message. "System breach detected. Building secured. Police notified." "What the hell?" Wesley hissed. "You said the security was disabled." "It was," Maya insisted, frantically typing commands that had no effect. This isn't possible. Vanessa's face had gone pale. It's Russell. He knows. In the maintenance closet, Russell opened a communication channel to the office's speaker system. His voice echoed throughout the executive floor. Good evening, Vanessa. Wesley, Maya, and Craig Doherty, I presume? I hope you're enjoying your little corporate espionage party, because it's about to become the most expensive mistake of your lives. Wesley lunged for the door, but it had already sealed automatically. This is illegal detention, he shouted to the empty air. My father will have your badge for this, Butler. Russell smiled grimly. Wesley had just confirmed the detective's involvement in their investigation. Another piece of evidence. Detective Butler isn't here, Russell continued through the speakers. But everything you've done and said in this building for the past hour has been recorded and transmitted to federal authorities. The evidence is already beyond your reach. Through his monitors, Russell watched panic spread across their faces. Maya began frantically attempting to delete files, unaware that her every keystroke was being logged and preserved. Don't bother, Maya, Russell said. Those deletions are being recorded as additional evidence of obstruction. You've already helped build a beautiful case against yourselves. Vanessa, ever the pragmatist, recovered first. Russell, be reasonable. We can make a deal. Like the deal you planned for me? Federal fraud charges? My company destroyed? My reputation ruined? Russell's voice remained eerily calm. I think I prefer my deal. You all go to prison for conspiracy, corporate espionage, attempted fraud, and public corruption. Wesley had pulled out his phone and was furiously texting, presumably to his father. Russell had anticipated this. Your father can't help you, Wesley. His diplomatic vehicle has already been stopped by state police for a routine DUI checkpoint. Quite unfortunate timing. This was true. Russell had arranged with Butler to have a legitimate checkpoint established on the senator's most likely exit route. The building will remain locked down until authorities arrive, Russell continued. I suggest you use this time to consider who among you wants to be the first to cooperate with prosecutors. First one typically gets the best deal. Russell watched as the group's unity instantly fractured. Craig, the tech specialist, immediately moved away from the others, while Wesley and Vanessa exchanged accusing glares. Russell sent a final text to Dom. Call it in. Within minutes, police sirens could be heard approaching the building. Russell's plan had worked perfectly. The conspirators caught in the act, their crimes documented, and the authorities arriving to find them locked in with the evidence. As Russell prepared to meet the police and formally present his evidence, his phone vibrated with an unexpected message from an unknown number. This isn't over, Russell. Some games have more than one round. LC, Lawrence Caldwell, Vanessa's father, reminding Russell that powerful adversaries rarely concede defeat easily. Russell pocketed his phone, the message only strengthening his resolve. The first battle was won, but the war continued. Outside in the rain, Russell greeted Detective Butler as patrol cars surrounded the building. They're all inside, Russell confirmed, along with evidence of everything we discussed. Butler nodded grimly. The FBI is 10 minutes out. This just became a federal case. As officers prepared to enter the building, Russell stood in the rain, watching the operation unfold. The company he'd built, the life he'd created, would never be the same. But neither would the people who had betrayed him. In the distance, thunder rolled across Portland Harbor, a fitting soundtrack to the storm Russell had unleashed. Chapter 8. Kings and Pawns. The Portland Federal Building hummed with activity despite the early hour. Russell sat in a sparse interview room, his third cup of coffee growing cold as he finished detailing the conspiracy to FBI Special Agents Carlisle and Wong. The clock on the wall showed 7:15 a.m., roughly 6 hours since the arrests at his company headquarters. Let me make sure I understand, Agent Carlisle said, reviewing her notes. You're alleging that Senator Philip Rankin, Attorney Lawrence Caldwell, your wife Vanessa Mercer, Wesley Rankin, and at least 3 of your employees conspired to steal proprietary information for the purpose of manipulating zoning regulations and property values in the Old Harbor development. Correct, Russell confirmed. The evidence I provided shows they accessed secure city infrastructure vulnerabilities that my company had discovered during our contracted security assessment. Agent Wong, the cybercrime specialist, looked up from Russell's technical documentation. This monitoring system you implemented, you created it specifically to catch them in the act. Yes. Once I discover my systems have been compromised, I built a parallel security framework they wouldn't detect. Everything they did last night was recorded and authenticated. Carlyle's expression remained professionally neutral. Including your father-in-law's involvement? The text messages and financial transfers established Lawrence Caldwell as a key organizer. He created the legal framework for their property acquisitions through shell companies. The interview continued for another hour, with Russell presenting his evidence. The agents were particularly interested in Senator Rankin's involvement, asking detailed questions about communications between the senator and the other conspirators. As the session concluded, Carlyle closed her notebook. Mr. Mercer, we'll need you to remain available for additional questions. This investigation will likely expand as we process the evidence. I understand, Russell replied. What about the charges against me? The cyber harassment allegations? Given the evidence you've provided, those appear to be falsified, Wong acknowledged. We'll be recommending those charges be dropped, but the final decision rests with the U.S. Attorney's Office. After the agents departed, Russell was left alone briefly before Detective Butler entered, carrying a file folder. Quite a night, Butler commented, sitting across from Russell. 4 arrests at your office, Senator Rankin detained for questioning, and a team of forensic accountants descending on Lawrence Caldwell's law firm. Any word on Caldwell himself? Russell asked. Butler frowned. That's the one loose end. He wasn't at his home or office. His assistant claims he left for a conference in Boston yesterday, but we can't confirm his arrival there. Russell wasn't surprised. Lawrence Caldwell was too cunning to be caught in the initial sweep. There's something else, Butler continued, sliding a document across the table. This was filed with the court yesterday afternoon. Vanessa's petition for an emergency protective order against you, claiming threatening behavior and emotional abuse. Russell scanned the document, noting the vivid descriptions of supposed threatening behaviors, all fabricated, all dated before their marriage had begun unraveling. Her backup plan, Russell concluded. If the theft accusation didn't stick, she'd play victim in another way. The timing is suspicious, Butler agreed. Filed the day before they planned to access your systems. Russell handed the document back. Will it hold up? Doubtful, given what we now know, but it's another complication. After Butler left, Russell was finally permitted to leave the federal building. Outside, the morning sun painted Portland Harbor in golden light, a stark contrast to the storm of the previous night. Russell stood for a moment, processing the whirlwind of events. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister Naomi. Dad wants to talk. We're at the house. Russell drove to his parents' home, preparing himself for a difficult conversation. His father had been firmly in Vanessa's corner, convinced of Russell's guilt. Now the truth was emerging, but family wounds wouldn't heal easily. Elaine opened the door before Russell could knock, embracing him tightly. You look exhausted, she said, studying his face with maternal concern. I've had better nights, Russell admitted. Inside, his father Douglas sat in his favorite armchair, looking older than his 70 years. When Russell entered, Douglas stood awkwardly, uncertainty in his expression. Russell, he began formally, then faltered. I saw the news reports about Vanessa and the arrests. It's true, Russell confirmed. All of it. Douglas shook his head slowly. I believed her. When she said you'd stolen that money, I believed her over my own son. She was convincing, Russell said, not quite ready to offer absolution. That's no excuse. Douglas's voice cracked slightly. I should have trusted you. Should have known better. The two men stood in uncomfortable silence until Elaine intervened. Russell needs food and rest, not apologies. We can talk more after he's had some sleep. Russell gratefully accepted the offered respite, retreating to his childhood bedroom where exhaustion finally claimed him. He slept deeply for the first time in days, waking in late afternoon to the smell of his mother's cooking and the sound of voices downstairs. When he descended to the kitchen, he found his siblings had arrived. Naomi sat at the counter with her husband Camden, while Preston leaned against the refrigerator. They fell silent when Russell appeared. "What happened?" Russell asked immediately, sensing bad news. Naomi passed him her tablet, open to a breaking news article. Senator Rankin denies corruption allegations, claims political witch hunt. The article quoted the senator vehemently denying any wrongdoing and suggesting Russell had fabricated evidence as revenge for his wife's affair with Wesley Rankin. "He's trying to get ahead of the story," Russell observed. "Classic deflection." "There's more," Preston said grimly. "Lawrence Caldwell held a press conference an hour ago. He's painting you as unstable and vindictive, claiming you're framing Vanessa because she wanted a divorce." Russell absorbed this calmly. They're coordinating their counterattack, using their public positions to control the narrative. "Will it work?" Cameron asked. "I mean, you have evidence, right?" "Evidence can be challenged, testimony discredited. They're powerful people with resources and connections." Russell set down the tablet. "But they've made a critical mistake." "What's that?" Naomi asked. "They think this is about saving my reputation or getting revenge." "It's not." Russell's expression hardened. "This is about justice. And I'm just getting started." Russell's phone rang. Zoe Clark, the investigative reporter. "Mr. Mercer," she began without preamble, "I've been researching those properties you mentioned. Bayside Ventures LLC has purchased 17 parcels surrounding the Old Harbor Development Zone in the past year. The ownership traces back through 3 shell companies to a Cayman Islands entity. Can you connect it to Senator Rankin or Lawrence Caldwell?" Russell asked. "Not directly, but I found something else. The zoning board is voting tomorrow on changes that would quadruple those properties' value." The proposal was fast-tracked by Commissioner Gregory Dunham, who received a $100,000 campaign donation from Rankin's Political Action Committee last month. Russell thanked her for the information and ended the call, immediately dialing Detective Butler. "I need to speak with the FBI agents again," Russell said. "There's new evidence of public corruption involving the zoning board." "They're expecting your call," Butler replied. "But you should know, the U.S. Attorney's Office is under pressure to proceed cautiously. Senator Rankin has friends in Washington." "Of course he does," Russell acknowledged. "But corruption leaves a paper trail, and I'm very good at following those." Over the next 24 hours, Russell worked with federal investigators, providing additional evidence and context for the conspiracy. The case was growing beyond the original corporate espionage allegations into a full-blown public corruption investigation. Meanwhile, the public battle intensified. Senator Rankin appeared on local television, portraying himself as the victim of a vengeful husband's fabrications. Lawrence Caldwell gave interviews questioning Russell's mental stability. Wesley Rankin was released on bail, immediately hiring a prominent defense attorney who specialized in white-collar crime. Vanessa, however, remained conspicuously silent, still in custody due to the severity of the corporate espionage charges and her direct involvement in accessing secure systems. Late that evening, as Russell worked in his secure apartment, reviewing evidence with Dominic, an unexpected visitor arrived. Maya Chun, released on bail earlier that day. "You shouldn't be here," Dominic warned, moving protectively toward Russell. "It's all right," Russell said, studying his former operations director. "Let's hear what she has to say." Maya looked diminished somehow, her usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I have information you need. Why would you help me now?" Russell asked coldly. "Because I made a terrible mistake," Maya admitted. "And because Lawrence Caldwell is planning something dangerous. He never intended for any of them to face consequences. There's a contingency plan." Russell motioned for her to continue. "When I was first recruited by Lawrence, not Vanessa, he made it clear that failure wasn't an option. He said if things went wrong, he had insurance that would reset the board." "What kind of insurance?" Dominic pressed. Maya's expression grew troubled. "I don't know exactly, but he mentioned evidence that would make all of this disappear. Something so damaging to important people that no one would dare pursue the case." Russell considered this information carefully. Blackmail material, likely on federal officials or judges who might hear the case. "There's more," Maya continued. "Before I was arrested last night, I overheard Wesley on the phone with his father. He said something about implementing the failsafe if the operation went wrong. They mentioned your name specifically, Russell. The implications were clear, beyond discrediting him publicly. They might be planning something more direct against Russell personally. After Maya left, Dominic voiced his concerns. You realize she might still be working for them? This could be misdirection. Possible, Russell acknowledged. But it fits with Lawrence Caldwell's methods. He always prepares for contingencies. Russell spent the night analyzing potential vulnerabilities in his position. If Caldwell had blackmail material on federal officials, the legal case could be compromised, and a failsafe involving Russell personally suggested a targeted operation to neutralize him as a threat. By morning, Russell had developed countermeasures for both possibilities. He contacted Zoe Clark, providing her with a secure data package containing all his evidence with instructions to publish if anything happened to him. He also reached out to federal contacts from his NSA days, establishing indirect channels for the evidence that wouldn't be vulnerable to political interference. For personal security, Russell implemented protocols from his intelligence background, varying his routes, using secure communications, maintaining awareness of his surroundings. He also relocated from his apartment to a suite at the Wharf Hotel under a different name, ironically the same hotel where Vanessa had conducted her affair. As Russell prepared for the next phase of his strategy, his phone rang with a call from Detective Butler. You need to get to the federal building now, Butler said urgently. Vanessa is offering to cooperate. She's going to turn on Lawrence and the senator. Chapter 9. Checkmate. The federal building's secure interview room felt different this time, tension hanging in the air like an electrical charge. Russell sat beside his attorney, Thomas Whitfield, as FBI agents Carlisle and Wong prepared recording equipment. Across the table, Vanessa appeared in prison attire, flanked by her own lawyer, a sharp-featured woman whose reputation for negotiating favorable plea deals preceded her. Russell studied his wife dispassionately. After 15 years of marriage, she was now a stranger, someone capable of calculated betrayal and criminal conspiracy. Yet in her features, he could still see traces of the woman he'd fallen in love with, now transformed by ambition and greed. Mrs. Mercer has agreed to provide complete testimony regarding the Old Harbor development conspiracy, U.S. Attorney Patricia Lowry explained, entering the room with a file folder. In exchange for consideration in charging and sentencing. Russell remained silent, allowing his attorney to speak. We understand my client's presence was requested because Mrs. Mercer's testimony may involve allegations against him. That's correct, Lowry confirmed. We wanted Mr. Mercer present to address any counterclaims immediately. Vanessa finally met Russell's gaze, her expression unreadable. I'm prepared to tell the truth about everything, she stated, including Russell's involvement. Russell felt a flash of anger, but maintained his composure. This was another manipulation. He had expected it. The recording equipment activated, and Vanessa began her testimony. She described the conspiracy's origins, how Lawrence Caldwell had approached Wesley Rankin with a proposal to exploit insider information for the Old Harbor development, using Senator Rankin's political influence to fast-track zoning changes. My father brought me in approximately 18 months ago, Vanessa explained. Initially, he wanted me to gather information about Russell's security systems discreetly. The relationship with Wesley developed later. And your husband's knowledge of these activities? Agent Carlisle prompted. Vanessa hesitated, glancing at her attorney, who nodded slightly. Russell wasn't involved in the beginning, Vanessa admitted. But about 6 months ago, he discovered portions of our plan. Instead of reporting it, he saw an opportunity. Russell's attorney immediately objected. This is absurd. My client was the one who reported the conspiracy to authorities. Only after the arrangement fell apart, Vanessa insisted. Russell initially demanded a percentage of the profits in exchange for security protocols that would allow the zoning changes to proceed undetected. He called it his consultation fee for looking the other way. Russell watched this performance with clinical detachment. Vanessa was following Lawrence Caldwell's playbook perfectly, muddying the waters by implicating everyone, creating reasonable doubt through conflicting testimonies. "Do you have any evidence of Mr. Mercer's alleged involvement?" Agent Wong asked. "There were meetings at our house," Vanessa claimed. "Russell met with my father at least twice to discuss terms, and he provided Wesley with access codes to city systems that wouldn't be traceable." Russell's attorney interjected. "My client's home security system records all visitors. There were no such meetings. This testimony is demonstrably false." For the next hour, Vanessa constructed an elaborate alternative narrative, carefully weaving truth with fiction. In her version, Russell had become greedy and unpredictable, demanding larger payments and threatening to expose the conspiracy if not paid, which prompted their plan to discredit him preemptively. When the questioning finally concluded, U.S. Attorney Lowry looked troubled. "We'll need to verify these claims against existing evidence." "Of course," Russell replied calmly. "I anticipated this tactic. That's why I prepared this." He slid a flash drive across the table. "This contains audio recordings from my home office, conversations between Vanessa and her father discussing how to frame me once I discovered their conspiracy. It also includes communications between Vanessa and Wesley Rankin explicitly stating I knew nothing about their plans." Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. "That's illegal surveillance. He can't record conversations without consent." "Actually," Russell's attorney interjected, "Maine is a one-party consent state for recordings. As the homeowner and a participant in some of these conversations, Mr. Mercer was within his legal rights." Russell leaned forward. "The recordings also capture Vanessa and her father discussing this exact strategy, claiming I was complicit if their plan failed. They specifically mentioned creating a false narrative about my involvement as insurance." The revelation landed like a thunderclap in the small room. Vanessa's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, while the federal officials exchanged glances. "We'll need to authenticate these recordings," Agent Wong stated. "Of course," Russell agreed. "You'll find they align perfectly with the evidence I've already provided, including timestamps and digital signatures that prove they haven't been altered." As the meeting concluded, Russell couldn't resist one parting question for his wife. "Why, Vanessa? 15 years together. We built a life. Was it all just a means to an end?" For a moment, Vanessa's calculated facade faltered, revealing a glimpse of genuine emotion, perhaps regret, perhaps simply frustration at being outmaneuvered. "You were so focused on protecting everyone else, Russell. Your clients, your systems, your precious information. You never saw what was happening right in front of you." A bitter smile crossed her face. "For a security expert, you missed the biggest threat of all." "No," Russell corrected her quietly. "I saw it eventually, and I did what I always do. I contained the breach." Outside the federal building, reporters had gathered, alerted to Vanessa's cooperation agreement. Russell avoided the cameras, slipping away through a service entrance where Dominic waited with a car. "How did it go?" Dominic asked as they pulled away. "Exactly as expected," Russell replied. "Vanessa tried to implicate me. I was prepared. And Lawrence Caldwell? Still in the wind. But he's running out of options." Russell's phone rang, Detective Butler calling with news. The FBI had executed search warrants at Senator Rankin's offices and residences, discovering digital evidence corroborating Russell's claims. The senator was now under formal investigation by the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section. "What about the zoning board vote?" Russell asked. "Postponed indefinitely," Butler confirmed. The commissioner recused himself after questions about campaign donations surfaced. One by one, the conspiracy's objectives were being dismantled. The Old Harbor properties remained under their original zoning, rendering the elaborate scheme worthless. Wesley Rankin's architectural firm had suspended him pending the investigation. Maya and Barry faced professional ruin and potential prison time. Yet Lawrence Caldwell remained at large, the mastermind still positioned to cause damage. That evening, as Russell reviewed case updates in his hotel suite, he received an unexpected message, an email to his personal account with no subject line and a single line of text. "The Lighthouse Cafe, 9 p.m. Come alone if you want this to end cleanly. L.C." Russell immediately forwarded the message to Detective Butler, then considered his options. Meeting Lawrence Caldwell alone was risky, but it also presented an opportunity to finally confront the architect of his personal and professional nightmare. After consulting with Butler, who insisted on having plainclothes officers nearby, Russell agreed to the meeting. He arrived at the Lighthouse Cafe at precisely 9 p.m., selecting the same corner table he'd used for his confrontation with Barry. Lawrence Caldwell entered 10 minutes later, immaculately dressed as always, his silver hair perfectly styled despite being a fugitive. At 68, he carried himself with the confidence of a man accustomed to power and deference. Russell, he acknowledged, sitting opposite. "Thank you for coming. You're taking a significant risk, Lawrence," Russell observed. "Every law enforcement agency in the state is looking for you." Caldwell smiled thinly. "The advantages of a lifetime in the legal profession. I know every procedure, protocol, and weakness in the system." A server approached, but Caldwell waved her away with practiced authority. "I'll be direct," Caldwell continued once they were alone. "This situation has escalated beyond what's beneficial for either of us. I'm prepared to offer a resolution." "I'm listening," Russell replied, keeping his expression neutral. Caldwell opened a slim leather portfolio. "I have evidence implicating Senator Rankin in matters far beyond the Old Harbor development. Federal officials are also compromised. If released, this information would create a scandal that would destroy many careers, including yours by association." "Blackmail is your solution?" Russell asked. "I prefer to call it mutually assured destruction," Caldwell corrected. "Here's my proposal. The charges against Vanessa are reduced to a single count with probation only. Wesley receives similar consideration. In exchange, I provide testimony against Senator Rankin, making him the primary villain in this narrative." Russell studied his father-in-law with genuine curiosity. "And what happens to you in this scenario?" "I retire quietly to my home in the Cayman Islands. No charges, no extradition." "Why would I possibly agree to this?" Russell asked. "I have evidence of your central role in the conspiracy." Caldwell's smile remained fixed. "Because if you don't, I'll release everything I have. The collateral damage will be extensive, reaching people you care about. Your company will never recover from the associations." "You've miscalculated, Lawrence," Russell said quietly. "Again, have I?" Caldwell raised an eyebrow. Russell leaned forward. "You assume I care about preserving institutions or protecting powerful people. I don't. I care about justice. Release whatever you have. I'll still see you prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." For the first time, Caldwell's confidence wavered. "You'd sacrifice everything for principle?" "That's not the pragmatic businessman I know." "You never really knew me," Russell replied. "Just like Vanessa never did. You both saw what you wanted to see. Someone who could be used, manipulated, discarded when convenient." Russell stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "Detective Butler and FBI agents are outside. I'm wearing a wire, and this entire conversation has been recorded. Your blackmail attempt is now additional evidence against you." As Russell had spoken, Caldwell's expression had transformed from confidence to disbelief, then to cold fury. "You think this ends here? People like you don't win against people like me, Russell. The system is designed to protect its own." "Perhaps," Russell acknowledged, "but I'm not relying on the system alone." On cue, Russell's phone lit up with a notification. He turned the screen toward Caldwell, showing a breaking news alert from the Portland Press-Herald. "Exclusive. Documents reveal Senator Rankin's corruption ring. Lawrence Caldwell implicated as mastermind." While we've been talking, Zoe Clark published her investigation with all the evidence I provided, including the blackmail materials you just referenced. "Your leverage is gone, Lawrence. It's all public now." Caldwell's face drained of color as he realized the completeness of his defeat. Outside, through the cafe windows, Russell could see Detective Butler approaching with federal agents. "Checkmate," Russell said simply. 3 months later, Russell stood on the observation deck of Portland Headlight, watching winter waves crash against the rocky shore. The lighthouse had always been his favorite place to think, solid, enduring, a beacon amid chaos. The aftermath of what the media had dubbed the Old Harbor scandal continued to unfold. Senator Rankin had resigned in disgrace, now facing multiple federal charges. Lawrence Caldwell had accepted a plea deal, providing evidence against higher-level conspirators in exchange for a reduced sentence of 10 years. Wesley Rankin awaited trial, abandoned by his politically conscious family. Vanessa had ultimately pleaded guilty to corporate espionage and fraud, receiving a 5-year sentence. Their divorce had been finalized with surprising efficiency, the court recognizing the exceptional circumstances. Russell's company had survived, though not without damage. Some clients had departed during the uncertainty, but many had remained loyal after the truth emerged. With Maya and Barry gone, Russell had restructured the organization, promoting trusted employees and implementing even more rigorous security protocols. His family had rallied around him once the full story became public. His father, still struggling with guilt over his initial disbelief, had thrown himself into helping Russell rebuild, using his business connections to restore confidence in the company. The sound of footsteps on the path interrupted Russell's thoughts. Detective Butler approached, collar turned up against the December wind. "Thought I might find you here," Butler said, joining Russell at the railing. "Just got word from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The last of the old harbor properties has been seized under civil forfeiture. The city's establishing a public trust to develop affordable housing instead of luxury condos." Russell nodded, satisfied. "Justice of a sort. More than most cases get," Butler observed. "You've done good work, Russell. Exposed corruption that might have continued for years." Russell turned from the ocean view to face the detective. "What about the others? The officials implicated in Caldwell's evidence?" "Investigations ongoing. 3 judges have recused themselves. A deputy mayor resigned. The system works slowly, but it works." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching a ship navigate the channel toward Portland Harbor. "What now?" Butler finally asked. "After everything you've been through?" Russell considered the question. The past months had transformed him, stripped away complacency, reminded him of the person he'd been before success and routine had dulled his edges. "I'm expanding the company," Russell replied, "creating a new division focused on anti-corruption investigations for municipal governments, using what I've learned to help others expose similar schemes." Butler nodded approvingly. "From victim to advocate. Good evolution." "Not victim," Russell corrected. "Never that. I was a target who turned the tables." As Butler departed, Russell remained at the lighthouse a while longer. The cold Maine wind carried away the last lingering thoughts of betrayal and loss, leaving behind clarity and purpose. The conspiracy had intended to destroy him, to strip away everything he'd built and leave him disgraced. Instead, it had revealed his true strength. Not the systems he'd created or the success he'd achieved, but his unyielding commitment to truth and justice, regardless of personal cost. Russell turned from the lighthouse and walked toward his car, his path forward as clear as the beam that had guided ships safely to harbor for generations. The water had been cold indeed, but his revenge had been served at precisely the right temperature, cold enough for justice, but not so cold as to freeze his humanity. He had emerged not just victorious, but renewed, ready to build something better from the ruins of betrayal. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.